Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mila Alayubi. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Strategic Partnerships Director for BISC. And right now, we're going to meet three movement leaders who showed exceptional resilience and brilliance in their ability to adapt and innovate during their respective 2020 campaigns. So Melina, Ashley, and Katrina, during our discussion, I ask that you limit your answers to 1 to 2 minutes as I rotate between the three of you. And to the audience, I encourage you to add your questions to the Q&A throughout this conversation, and our panelists will answer as many as we can at the end. So let's begin. Could each of you please tell us a little bit about yourselves and your campaigns and where each of you drew your resilience from during the campaign to keep you going? I'll start with Ashley.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm Ashley Pinelli. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the Associate State Director at 9 to 5 Colorado. We are an economic justice organization for working women. And I worked on the Prop 118 ballot for paid family and medical leave in Colorado. And, a big source of strength and resiliency was just having the right partners and allies and community to work on the issue with. There were so many times where we were just challenged and undermined throughout this campaign, especially as women of color leading on paid family and medical leave in the state. And there were a lot of times we were asked to compromise on our values for the sake of just getting something passed. And that sounded nice sometimes, but really just regrounding in the values and just getting advice from my community about, how to move forward and how to stay strong was a big source of resiliency and helped me stay grounded.
Thank you so much. Katrina, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Katrina L. Rogers. I'm the principal of Colorado Media, and I was the campaign manager for Louisiana for Personal Freedoms. My pronouns are she, her, hers. For me, with everything that I do, my resiliency campaign was about abortion, but I named every single day that my fight wasn't just limited to abortion, but it was about the people of Louisiana and fighting for us to have access to the things that we need to survive, not only survive, but be well and thrive. And I carry that commitment and my commitment to the people who are pushed farthest to the margins and everything that I do. And that was a very, very important part of the work that I carried with the campaign.
Thank you so much. Melina, your turn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melina Cohen, pronouns she, her. So I helped this last election lead the effort to abolish slavery from Nebraska's constitution, which was successful. And then my day job is I'm a communications director with Stand for Schools, which is a small nonprofit here in Nebraska.
So this question is for all of you. What were some of the challenges that you faced because of the multiple crises going on in your states and around the country? And how did you adapt and innovate? Starting with Ashley again.
Yeah, I think that we've been working on paid leave in Colorado for years and years now. And for many years, it was a legislative effort. And that was a really difficult environment to try to navigate this type of policy. We spent a lot of years being shut down. The women of color leaders in those spaces were constantly just not listened to about what our communities needed and, told we were asking for too much and told we were taking up too much space, and just the same story over and over, just really gaslit and undermined throughout this entire process for so many years. And it came to a point where we had to make some pretty serious decisions about how we wanted to move forward in the legislature, and a really problematic program idea came to the forefront that would have really just threatened the movement for paid leave across the nation and just created a really problematic, inequitable policy at the state level. So we had to push really hard to pull the plug on that legislative effort to defeat a really bad and dangerous bill. And honestly, the innovation was running a ballot, which people really underestimated us in the state, told us it would never pass, that Colorado voters weren't ready for this, and that we would be setting the movement back by another decade if we dare run a ballot, and it failed. And we just really had to trust our instinct that workers and voters, this is a really common sense policy to folks, and that the people who are actually impacted by this issue want to see it passed. And bringing it to the ballot in itself, building a campaign in a really short amount of time, what was kind of our innovation and the risk we took. And I'm really happy it paid off.
Thank you for that. Katrina, what about you?
Wow. So many things. I'm going to name the largest obstacle that we had to deal with was white supremacy in our everyday lives and in the background of what was going on in the world. That's always happening. But the uprisings were a backdrop. Obviously, the pandemic, we had 6 hurricanes come to Louisiana that were scheduled to come specifically to New Orleans where I lived. One of them did come, but we had 2 that hit other parts of southern Louisiana. So we had all of these crises going on at the same time that overlapped, and it goes back to resiliency. Like, I guess it wasn't really innovative. It was like resiliency and knowing that the people who were impacted by the other things that were going on were also the people that we centered in the campaign, and that we could not afford to stop fighting because they needed us more than ever. And so we just kind of went with it early on when we realized that the pandemic was a thing and people were going to quarantine and door knocking may not be the safest approach, especially early on, because Louisiana was a state that was heavily hit. Early last spring, we switched to doing a lot of digital outreach as much as possible and having conversations and doing research specifically about what kind of conversations we could have with people on the phones, making sure that we're making contact with as many people and having conversations about what's going on. So we just responded to everything in real time. And, the biggest things were not directly with the campaign, but what was happening outside of it that impacted not only the campaign, but also staff, because people who work on campaigns are people and they have lives and they have families and other issues and concerns aside from just working on the campaign.
So true. All right, Melina, how about you?
Well, yeah, because of COVID, we couldn't safely use a lot of those traditional campaign tactics and tools like canvassing. So we also relied pretty heavily on digital campaigning, social media, traditional media. Our other big issue in Nebraska was capacity. We were an entirely volunteer effort, so I didn't get paid for this work. My partner, Brad Christian Salas, also did not get paid for this effort. And at the same time, we, like everywhere else in the nation, were watching these protests unfold in response to George Floyd's murder. And in Omaha, during one of those protests, a young Black man, James Scurlock, was killed by a white supremacist. And that obviously resulted in a lot of, righteous unrest, even more so here in Omaha. And that pulled away Brad. He did some excellent work organizing the community around, Black Lives Matter. And also the senator who actually got this amendment through our legislature, Senator Justin Wayne, ended up representing the family of James Scurlock. So my team, sometime last summer, kind of became then a team of one, because there was just so much going on in our community. And at the same time, we just had a lack of funding, I think, here and resources. And I realized I didn't answer this the first time, so I will now. But even despite all of these challenges, I drew a lot of strength from every single person who was out in the street protesting. Everybody who I know is incarcerated right now, and also from the help that we received from organizers in other states, like Colorado in particular, which became the first state to abolish slavery from their constitution.
And to all three of you, if you could give one piece of advice to future funders, stakeholders, and other advocates based on your experience, what would that be? Giving that one to you, Katrina.
I've spent a lot of time trying to convince funders that investing in a campaign in Louisiana was not a waste of money. I am always advocating for the South, and you've heard me have those conversations. It is really important that there is real investment in the South and that you don't look at us and say, well, we can't do this, we can't do that because there's no infrastructure if you're not investing in us. I have so many friends who were involved in what was going on in Georgia and really proud of them. Also very angry because I have been telling people for a long time that we can win in the South. And my hope is that people will take us seriously and that they won't look at what's going on and people are being marginalized and that there's so much oppression and suffering here, and look at it as an opportunity. If you truly are trying to make things better, then you really need to invest in the spaces where people are harmed the most by systems and the government. And that's the biggest thing, is that you just don't be superficial when you're looking at what's going on. I had to have a lot of conversations explaining that, yes, you look at the state legislature of Louisiana as red, but also there's a story behind that. And it has to do with funding and term limits and all of these other things that you won't know unless you're invested and involved and care enough to have those robust conversations. So really, please do the work, to due diligence, have conversations with people who are doing the work, because we've been doing the work without money. So imagine what we can accomplish if you actually truly did invest and implement change. It is your responsibility to invest and do the hard work and not just support the places where you think you can win.
And for your initiative, did you win? And what do you believe the initiative accomplished?
We did not win. Our fight was to defeat a ballot measure from going to the Constitution to say that abortion is not a right. We did not win that. But my goal was always to touch people across the state and help fortify the statewide coalitions that we could get to a point where we could really have relationships across the state and push for the things that we need. So I was also talking about how unemployment, the most you can get in Louisiana is $207 a year. There's Cancer Alley, where petro plants are killing people, and we have lead in our water and all of these other things that are connected to, again, people suffering. So in that regard, we didn't defeat the amendment, but we did really establish a lot of relationships, and the work continues, and people are very excited, especially in places outside of New Orleans where people are typically ignored and overlooked and not considered. And it was really important for me to make sure that we were running a statewide campaign that considered every one of the 64 parishes in Louisiana.
I love it. That's phenomenal. Ashley, for you, what advice would you give?
Well, I echo everything Katrina said, and just to build on it a little, where to begin? I would say that we have to be focused on values and equity. Supporting a campaign in itself is not enough. Supporting how we win campaigns, how we have transformative real change for our communities, that is equally and more important than getting wins. And I think that it's just really important to be investing in the leaders on the ground who are upholding the values, upholding equity, who are closest to the most directly impacted folks on the ground. And just listening to the needs, just listen to women of color. We're laying out very clearly what is needed. And we just need folks investing in that work and really trying to build transformative relationships with each other and build deep trust with funders, with other stakeholders in coalition. I would say that relationship building and sticking to the values and being united on these fronts will get us a long way. And I just see sometimes a lot of maybe disagreement within the progressive community about what the approach is. And we don't have that type of time to waste. We just have to be in agreement that the approach needs to be to uphold the strongest values that will create transformational change for our communities. And that is what we should be united about. We have enough opposition to deal with that we should feel pretty solid in how we work together.
Now, because we are running out of time, I actually want to throw in a couple of questions for everyone, Melina. But we can come back if we have some more time for your advice as well. First question being, how helpful was the social media in the campaign? And also, because this is all relating to COVID-19 impacts on voter contact and tactics, how much did COVID limit door-to-door voter contact, which you did touch on? And how do you think it impacted the outcome of your campaigns? So both social media and the door-to-door contact. Anyone who wants to jump in, this is for y'all.
I have an answer, but I can wait if someone else wants to say something.
Go ahead, Katrina.
Okay.
Yes.
So for context, I didn't get banned until September. So we had to rely very heavily on social media because I didn't have a way to contact voters. And so blame the pandemic, but also I just didn't have access to contact voters in the state of Louisiana. We didn't have money for it for a really long time. And no one who had access to it would give the campaign access to ban in Louisiana. So in addition to like fighting to figuring out how to get money to actually get Van and call people, a lack of resources was really important. I think, yes, the pandemic was an issue and all of these other things too, but I really just want to name specifically how a lack of resources, even when they were available to be shared with us, were not given to us. And I just want to explicitly name that.
Truth. Ashley and Melina, any other thoughts on the impacts?
Yeah, in this virtual world, we relied so heavily on social media. We did a dozen different live streams because we couldn't have in-person events. We relied heavily on social media toolkits. We didn't do any in-person door knocking. We also set up our van system at about at the end of August, and it was just really a learning curve for us to try to get that set up. But we did rely really heavily on our text and phone banking programs, and they worked really well. I would say that signature collection was really difficult in a pandemic, and we invested quite a bit of resources into signature collection alone to even qualify for the ballot with the social distance protocols. So it definitely added an extra challenge, but also in hindsight, now we have some of the tools and resources that we need to do this virtually in a way we've never done before this.
Fantastic.
I would just quickly say, yeah, we actually never had van access. We did no in-person voter contact. We actually didn't do any direct voter contact. We relied very heavily on social media and traditional media. We spent almost our entire budget on radio advertising, which we can see from the election results had a direct impact on our victory here.
Fantastic. And it just really lifts up the idea that organizations and campaigns who have privilege, van is a privilege, right? And we really have to address these dynamics and make these tools more accessible for folks who need them across our ecosystem. So that's fantastic that you all lifted that up. And it's amazing what you were able to accomplish without it or with only very little. And with that, ladies, we are out of time.